welcome back. This is another day, another live. We're here at Broadway Music Sessions, and I am your host, Geraldine Anello. We interview amazing Broadway, West End, and tour music directors to help us all through this time and also continue the growth in our career so we can all have our dreams come true as time goes on. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the amazing, wonderful Brian Usifer. Hey, Brian.
Hi, how's it going?
So good. So everyone, if you do not know Brian Usifer, he is the music director of Frozen. We're going to talk about this. He also was the music director of Kinky on Broadway, as well as the associate music supervisor of the tour of Book of Mormon, also Kinky Boots in the UK and Canada and tour. And he's also working on amazing new shows that are slated for Broadway. So we're so excited to talk to him. Everyone, if you're watching live, remember, you can put your questions in the comment box, and I will make sure to ask them for you to Brian. So, Brian, before we get started with all the amazing questions I have for you regarding your incredible career, we just heard the news just a few days ago that your show, Frozen on Broadway, is closing because of the pandemic. So, how are you doing?
I'm okay. You know, I'm sad. I think we're all really sad. We didn't really see it coming. It was unexpected. You know, and I think that's you know, you have to sort of look back at what the show was and how much it meant and all the good times we had. And, you know, I think that we're really proud of the thing that we created. And so it's sad that it has to come to an end. But, you know, I think that as musicians, you know, we are freelancers and we have to understand that every gig is going to end at some point, and we have to, you know, be emotionally prepared for that and just sort of as resilient as we can be. And so I think that, you know, I'm excited for what's next, and I'm excited to sort of make new things and create new things. And so, yeah, I'm sad to see it go, but, you know, life goes on and we'll make some new stuff.
We're very sorry to see it go too. I mean, I have to say, I saw you like about a year ago do it, and it was so incredible. So I think I speak for the rest of all the music directors out there in saying that for the entire team of Frozen, we really are sorry to see it go. And we look forward to seeing it on tour, and we look forward to seeing it in all the future incarnations it's going to have that you will be leading for sure. But the thing that's great with you is that we don't know when theater will come back, but you're an incredible arranger and orchestrator. And so I'm sure you're going to be and also producer. You do a lot of technology, music based. So I would love to talk about some of the projects you've been working on in that realm that you are going to be using during this time.
Sure.
What sorts of projects do you have going on? Anything in particular with music, technology, arranging?
Yeah. So I've been like focusing a lot of energy songwriting and producing, which is something that I've always had a passion for. It's what I actually moved to New York City to do, you know, 20 years ago, was to be a songwriter and to be a producer. And I sort of came here at a bad time for that. And I found my way into theater, which I love, and I love doing theater. I'm happy that I did that. But it's, you know, now that we don't have theater right now, you know, the time that I do have when I'm not parenting and sort of doing all that stuff, I've been working with some great people and working, you know, writing some songs and doing some producing and stuff like that. I'm also a composer, and I've been writing a lot of instrumental music and for fun, and just trying to sort of see, you know, where that'll lead me and where that energy can be focused. There's definitely a couple of theater projects too that are on the horizon. And so, you know, since I have the time, I'm able to kind of focus some time and energy on that. There's a show that we're doing at Berkeley Rep next summer based on the Avett Brothers music. And I, right before all of this, had sort of decided, well, I should learn how to play the banjo, because there's a lot of banjo in this show. And, you know, I play the guitar. And so whenever I write guitar parts, I always have the guitar in my hands, and I figure it out, you know, that way. But the banjo is like, I'm not sure really how that works. And so I worked with their banjo company that they get their banjos from, and I got one sent here. And so I was really like playing a lot of banjo for a while, which is really fun, and I'm sure my neighbors love that. But, you know, that and you know, a bunch of other theater projects that are still sort of, we're trying to get them going. And there's a bunch of things that you know, are on their way to being ready for a theater. And so we're sort of hoping that maybe towards the end of this, that's something that'll come out of it.
So I'm so excited about that show by the Avid brothers. It's called Swept Away. And so it says that music is by them. Is it music of their catalog, or is it brand new music they're writing specifically for the show?
It's a little bit of both. So it's mostly their catalog music, and they've been very gracious to give Chris Miller and I, the ability to rearrange some of it or rethink it a bit. Focus it on the storytelling and make sure that it kind of has the right shape. Sort of each song individually, but also the score as a whole. And they've also written some new music for it. So it's a little bit of a hybrid.
What is the story? Is it about their story as a band, or is it a completely different story?
No, I'm going to be vague about this because it's a little bit sort of dark and exciting, but it is it's based on a true story that has been sort of interpolated into a more theatrical and more not based on the true events, but sort of inspired by the story of a whaling ship in the late 19th century.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I was wondering if it was about the band is because I remember I did an interview with their cellist, Joe Kwan, who was a fascinating guy. And I remember some of the things he was saying was how when he first did his first concert with them, he had been a classically trained cellist and was sitting down, and he was like getting that audience to start like that kind of energy towards him. He was like, I can't play this show sitting down. I have to stand up. And then talking about the decades of playing standing up and what that did for his back, and also like, because he will tap on it and things like that. And he was saying how he had a specially made cello so that he could do that. He was like, don't do that with your cello at home, kids.
He's amazing. And watching him perform, it's like defying gravity. It's like how he sort of does it all. Like, it's incredible.
He's a monster is what he is. Yeah. But so I was like, if there's a musical that's about him just in and of itself, I'll go see that.
Totally.
It's not that show, though. It's for the next one, right?
For the next one, yeah.
So you also worked on Heart of Rock and Roll, which I heard a lot about like in the fall or last year, because a lot of people were doing workshops and readings, and everybody was very excited about it. Where is that at? What is it about?
So we did a workshop, I guess, a little over a year ago, and we're in the process of sort of looking for a theater, and that's kind of where the show still is right now. Sort of ready to go and ready to get a home. And it's one of my favorite projects because, I love Huey Lewis, and I grew up listening to that music. And, when I first read the script, I was like, okay, it's not set in the 80s, and it's not about him. And so I went back to, the writers and the director and the producer, and I was like, listen, I love this idea. I'm totally on board. I feel like to make it work, we're going to have to play with the music quite a bit, and kind of put it in different voices and put it in some different styles and make it not sound super 80s, but just having that flexibility. I was like, are we sure that Huey's okay with that? Like, should I talk to him? And so, I called Huey Lewis, which was like a crazy, fun thing to do.
Another day in the life.
I know, right? And I kind of pitched him my ideas, and I was like, listen, I'm happy to make demos and send you everything. And he was like, Brian, I love your ideas. I trust you. I'll see you at the first reading. And that's what we did. And he came, and we sort of did the whole thing. And of course, that whole week putting it together, I was like, what's he going to think? And he, is super gracious and super helpful and, really supportive of the whole thing and supportive of me, and really, has been excited about the things that we've done. And his feedback has all been dead on and really smart. And he and I have a very good back and forth. And so, if there is something that, bumps him or he wants it to be something else, it's a really easy conversation to have. And we almost, 100% of the time find ourselves, on the right end of that. So it's really fun. It's a really fun story, and it's, it's uplifting and it's positive, and the music is incredible, and it's really fun. And I hope that everybody can see it soon.
I have to tell you, when you started this story about calling him and telling him that you basically are going to change everything he did, I did not see the story ending with, he said, yes, go right ahead.
I know. I didn't either.
That is not exactly the most common collaboration with people who are not used to musical theater, because musical theater is so inherently collaborative, and we learn on the job how to be collaborative. It's not something that is necessarily natural in a lot of people. And so for people who haven't had to do it, to all of a sudden come and be like, sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, and it's tricky, with existing material, you have to ride that fine line too, because you don't want to be disrespectful, right? You have to
Yeah.
respect the original material. You have to respect what it is and what it meant, and that we're all, with his songs in particular, we're all here because they were hits and because, of his successful career. And so by saying I want to change this song, I don't want that to seem like, I think that there's something wrong with it, or it's, so finding that pitch and finding the way to explain that and collaborate is definitely something that takes a little bit of practice and skill, and just knowing how to approach it in a way that says, to fit this moment and to fit this storytelling, here's how I think that we can do it, and this is why, rather than I think we should just put a new groove to this, or we should just change this song entirely. You have to really have a good reason, and also you should have a good reason anyway. If you're going to change something that works and is really good, you have to, I think, have that support behind the idea.
So let us be the fly on the wall. What exactly do you say to someone of that level where you write that line you just described?
I think you have to approach. Listen, I approach everything that I do as an arranger and as an orchestrator from a storytelling point of view, right? Because that ultimately is what everybody's trying to do. It's what the writer's trying to do. It's what the actors are doing, the director, the set, the lights, the sound. Everything has to be telling the same story, or at least trying to tell the same story. And so, the arrangement is no different. And if you're composing the song, you're thinking, what is the story? How am I telling the story? And so, that's the mindset that I have to get in. And so what I have to really understand is, what is the story that's being told, and what is the writer trying to accomplish with the song, and how can I put those words that exist in this character's mouth in this situation and support what that story is, and for example, if you have something that is, an up-tempo rockin', electric guitar heavy song, and the writer, or you have sort of changed it and said, well, I actually look at these lyrics and I can see like a small, quiet, intimate moment here really working. So that arrangement should reflect that. And so you have to say, well, how can I do, what's the version of that works? It can't, big drums, big guitars is not going to work. And so what about acoustic guitars or piano or, brushes on the drums, just, anything that would support the story. And so that's how I would do it. I'd go at it from the storytelling and pitch it that way.
I think your communication abilities is really something that I've admired for a long time. I remember we did a show together, and this was when I was first new in the city, and I still had this idea that what amount of money you're given is the amount of money you're given. And to me, this was on all the levels, right? If a show tells me we can pay you this much, that means that they can pay me that much. And if a show tells me we have this much for your band, that's what it means. And I learned in the room with you that day, clearly it stuck with me, because you were the supervisor and you sat in with the producers who were telling us this was a Motown show written by Lamont Dozier, who's a famous Motown writer. And the producers were telling us they only had money, I don't remember exactly, but maybe for 1 or 2 piece band. And you were so calm, cool, and collected, and you were like, I completely understand that, and that makes perfect sense for the budget. I wonder if we could maybe shift things around, because it would be hard for me to go back to Lamont Dozier, this incredible, well-known Motown person, and explain to them that their music has to be watered down. And you did it much better than what I just said. You did it much more subtly.
I don't even remember this.
No, of course you don't, because to you it was business as usual. But for me, it was the first time, because what happened is you said it like very casually, like it was part of the conversation, not an ask. And the producer was like, oh, I understand what you're saying. Let me see what I can do. And sure enough, we ended up with a 4-piece band for a children's show that was playing in the morning. And it was like, what? You pulled a magic trick right there. And it stuck with me, because after that, I understood money could always be shifted around and be a conversation. And that's one of the many things I've learned from working with you. But the communication around budget, how did you learn to have them so well?
Well, listen, I think, a lot of collaboration and a lot of communication is about seeing the other side. And I think that, it's really hard for a lot of people when they're negotiating to understand that the other side, has a point of view and they have an understanding of the situation, and it might not be the same as yours, right? And when it comes to music, music doesn't come naturally to everybody like it does to us. It's why I always say when I'm doing a reading, I always want to have a drummer there because, if you and I hear a piano part, we immediately are going to hear a drum part or know what the groove is or know what it's going to be. But people that aren't musically inclined don't necessarily have that ability. And so you have to walk them up to that a little bit more and be a little clearer about what it is that you want. And, at the end of the day, there is as much money as there is, and you have to kind of work with what that is, what's there. But you also have to know and be able to communicate this. If you want me to deliver this sound, right? If this is the thing that, as the music supervisor and the arranger orchestrator, this is what's being asked of me to deliver this, I need this, this, and this, right? And I can understand from the other side that the budget is not this big, right? The budget is this big. And so what I would try to do is how can I deliver what they want me to deliver within the constraints that they're giving me, right? And if you're just too far off, you can't do it. I mean, like, at the end of the day, you get to a point where you say, well, I can't do that. I can't make something sound like John Williams with two pieces. It's just not possible. But can I make something sound like Motown with four? Sure. Did I want 8 or 9? Yes. Or 16? Of course. But knowing where we were and knowing the theater and the budget, I was able to I guess I do remember that conversation. I don't, but with 4 pieces, we made it work, and we did some good, fun keyboard programming, and we did drum loops, and we did all kinds of fun stuff. And I loved that show, and I still love that show, and it was a lot of fun to do, and it was great to work with you as well. And you did a great job with it.
Thank you. I think that's what's so fun. It's like the looking at, like, me knowing you, like, you are this incredible pianist in all the styles. You are this incredible conductor, piano conducting, stick conducting, and then you're saying we did the drum loops, we did the keyboard programming, you did the keyboard programming, you did the drum loop. I mean, you can do all of that, and then you have those communication skills. And again, it's like it's that package that makes an incredible music director. And I mean, no kidding, you're having the career you have. I remember another conversation, now that we're on the side of communication, where you were talking during previews of Kinky Boots. You were telling me about the process of finding the actual sounds of the keyboard, because they were coming from music by Cyndi Lauper, and she was attached to those sounds from the 80s. And you and the rest of the team were trying to move it to a little bit different path, which I'm not sure which one it is. But could you tell us a little bit of what those conversations looked like with her?
Yeah, I think that, I love Kinky Boots, and I love working on it. And I was so, happy with how the show ended up sounding, and going from the very first reading to like where we ended up, opening night on Broadway is like such a crazy, journey and story. And I think that when you get into pop music, there are so many different ways to go with it. There's so many different, sounds that suggest certain things, and sounds that, consciously and subconsciously bring up, oh, this feels 80s, or oh, this feels modern, or oh, this feels like a dance song, or this feels like, a rock and roll song. And so, our goal always with that show was to make it sound modern, but also knowing that, our composer was a famous 80s composer, and her sound is her sound. And so, finding the balance of that and finding the blend of that was something that was really fun to do and exciting to do. And, it was a big sort of music team too, because you had Stephen Remus and myself and Randy Cohen, who was doing the keyboard programming, right? And Will Van Dyke, who was playing a lot of the synths. I mean, my book was much more piano, keyboard kind of thing. It wasn't super synthy. And so you have to respect all of your collaborators at the same time. You also have a director and producers, and you have all these people. And so anytime you change anything, people notice. I mean, you can't just like go changing everything on a show and not have people be aware of it. And so navigating all of that is the tricky thing, and saying like, this sound needs to sound like this, or I think this sound needs to sound like this, and how to walk from, point A to actually putting into the show. It does take quite a bit of communication. It takes quite a bit of getting people on the same page in terms of what the goal is, because ultimately, if you have an idea and somebody else has an idea and your goals don't match, no matter what you do separately, you're never going to end up in the same place. And so you need to make sure that what the goal is clear, and equal across the boards, and everybody knows what that is. Then it's really easy. Then it's like, this is fun. We're all aiming at the same thing. And so most of the conversations were more about what is it, what should it be, and once that was kind of settled, getting there, we're all smart, resourceful people. We can figure it out. But you do have to know what it is you want. You need to know, you gotta know what you want the soup to taste like. Otherwise, you don't know what to put in it.
So you got to know what the soup tastes like. Your new music directing quote for the day. You're welcome.
I do a lot of food analogies. I sort of live in the food land, so.
That's true. You and Joe Kwan, you can open a restaurant together. It'll be a success.
I love that.
So I want to talk about professionalism, because I think when we think of you, like you really uphold a certain level of professionalism in what you do. And that's why I'm wearing this fancy jacket today, is because
I know, and I'm just a mess.
You are known, you are never a mess, but you are known for asking your band members to dress business casual. And also you for yourself have a standard of always conducting with a bow tie or a tie on. So that's one part of professionalism. But the other one I got to witness myself, here's another memory you do not have, is I was in a rehearsal with a show, and you came in as the music supervisor, went straight to the piano, looked at the face sheet of the actor, and within a second memorized every single name and remembered them for the rest of the time. And you were also saying at the Book of Mormon how the hardest thing of your job as a supervisor on tour was to remember all those names, because they all kind of looked similar, because they had been put in those roles to look similar. And that was difficult. So I want to know, at what point did you make the decision, I'm going to know all of my actors' names at all times, no matter how many productions I work on, no matter how long I am on site or not? When did you make the decision, everyone has to dress a certain way? Was that a moment in time, or did it evolve over time?
I think it probably evolved over time. I think that you learn from watching people be successful, and you learn from watching people not be successful. And I came up through this process, as an assistant for a while, and then I MD'd, and then I did other things, and then I supervised, and I still kind of do all of those things. But I've been lucky to work with really great people, and I've learned a lot from them. And so a lot of what I do, I think I've taken from different parts of teams that I've worked with. But I do think that there's a basic level of respect that you should pay your collaborators and people that you're working with. And I think that we forget as musicians, because we're trained to play music, and especially as pianists, we're certainly not trained to work with other people, right? We're trained to sit in a room and learn our solo rep. That you have to open up your view of what the team is. You have to open up your view of, I want to know everybody in this room's name, because I expect that they know my name as well. And so, I would pay everybody the same respect. It's funny, because I actually do remember the first time, is probably one of the first shows I ever music directed. And I, before the first rehearsal, said, I'm going to memorize every single actor's name, so that I'm not like searching for, while I'm teaching music, because I cast the show, you sit down the table and you cast the show, but it was like 3 months later before that first music rehearsal. And so of course you get to that point, you're like, and so I looked at that sheet, and I memorized everybody's name. And I think that showing that respect goes a long way, and it makes people, feel like you care about them, because you do. And especially if you do care, you want to show that. You want to make sure that comes across. You want to show, I am here to be a good collaborator. I'm here to be a respectful person and a respectful member of the team. And I think that does bring a lot of goodwill to the room, and it brings a lot of goodwill to the process. Because in a way, it also like checks a little bit of ego. It checks your ego at the door, and says that, if you're going to know my name, I want to know your name at the same time. And in terms of the dress code, it's funny. I went to public school my whole life, but I went to Catholic high school for like my last few years, and had to, wear a shirt and tie and everything. And I don't remember how I felt. I think I liked not having to think about what I was wearing, but I don't know if I liked wearing a tie or anything. But, listen, I think that, again, as musicians, we have to put our best foot forward, and we have to, show that we think of this as a job, and we think of this as a career and a profession. And, we're here to do that job. And people in the real world, they go to work and they dress up and they look nice. And um, just because you're in an orchestra pit and not seen, I think doesn't mean that you should just look disheveled. And and listen, and obviously I might be one of the people that shares that view. I'm not saying that any other view is wrong. It's just how I sort of feel about it. I find that when you think about what you're wearing and you put some nice clothes on, you bring a different attitude to work. You bring a different sense of what you're doing. And so yes, as much as the musicians, I think, don't love it sometimes, I do ask that they, come business casual to work. And everybody's been really great about it. And you show up and you feel like you're at a work environment, and everybody's ready to do their job. And you want everybody to feel relaxed and comfortable, but professional has to be a word that's in that sentence at the same time, right? You can't feel like you're at home sitting on your couch, because I don't think that that's the mindset that you would be in if you were going to be performing a solo at Carnegie Hall, for example, right? And that's, if we're talking like the mental game of this, right, the inner game of tennis of all of this, I want the musicians to be at their top every time they play. And that's what I want as well. I want to show up and I want to get to the podium and I want to be like at 10, ready for my A game. And I have to sort of mentally be ready for that. And if you're sort of relaxed and kind of casual and you get up there, it's hard, at least for me, to force myself to lose wrist.
Conducting. Yeah, got it.
So maybe I'm projecting my own process on everybody that I work with, but I know that I certainly have to put, when I always get to the theater definitely by half an hour, if not 15 minutes before that. And, I'm stretching, I'm doing yoga, I'm making sure my clothes are ready. I mean, we're lucky as MDs, a lot of times we'll have dressers and they'll like iron and fold our clothes for us. But still, I've got to change out of my street clothes and put clothes on and tie my tie and do all those things. Although I did get a little relaxed about it at Frozen after a while. It was hot.
And the
it was really hot.
Out.
I mean, I was standing for 2.5 hours in the summer, and once you get used to that.
What does the dress code a bit look like on Brian Usifer?
I mean, I still wore a dress shirt with a collar, and I still wore dress pants and dress shoes, and
just no tie and no jacket.
Yeah.
But still a collared shirt.
At Kinky Boots, every single show I wore a tie. Yeah. Every single show.
We have a question here from Lawrence, who wants to know, do you have any tips on balancing professionalism as a music director with being relatable and friendly with a cast?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think that the dynamic between the music director and the cast is a tricky one, because you do have to have a good sense of openness with them. You want them to feel comfortable coming to you. You want to be able to be comfortable with them. And also, singers, their voice is their body and themselves. And so when you're working with singers, you have to be sensitive to that. And you have to understand that, how to give a note and how to communicate something and how to approach, if somebody may not be singing in the best way, or maybe they're sick and you need to help them and you need to give them support, of how to do that. And I think that, listen, at the end of the day, you also have to maintain a certain level of, you are the music director. And so they do have to, on some level, take your notes. So they have to take, the things you're asking them to do. And that dynamic has to, I think, be really clear. And so you have to be careful. You don't want to sort of walk too far into the friend zone, because it is really hard to be a good manager in that sense. And I think, it's taken 29 minutes for me to say the word manager, but music directors are essentially managers in a lot of ways, right? We manage people, we manage the cast, we manage the orchestra on a musical level, right? We're not doing like legit management things. We're not doing payroll. We're not doing, any of that. But if you describe your job to somebody who doesn't know anything about music, they'd say, oh, you're a manager, right? You're the manager of the music, right? And so I think you do have to maintain that dynamic. And you also have to be careful with favorites and getting close with some people and not others. And, the optics of that, I think, is really important. I try to be as sort of equally, to everybody at the same. I think for me, that's the easiest way to do it. And it makes it easy and clear for me to give the information that I want to give. And I try to be very empathetic towards the cast. At the same time, I try to again, I look at it from their point of view. How are they feeling? How, they're up there dancing at a 10 and they're like, they can barely breathe. And I'm like, can't you sing louder? It's not going to go well. So I have to be understanding of the situation. And especially, when you're creating a new show, you can also look at that and say like, okay, here's my expectation and here's the choreographer's expectation. And if they're not, if they can accomplish both at the same time, that's a conversation to have with the choreographer. And I don't know where that would end up. And, you never know until you approach it, but you can certainly have the conversation and say like, this is what I need them to do musically. And they're struggling to do that. And they might turn around and say, well, this is what I need them to do for the choreography. And so, it's going to be a back and forth. But not having the conversation, you're just going to constantly be giving notes to be singing out in a place that maybe they can't actually do that,
Mm-hmm. And we're talking about all the logistics and the other side of the music directing. Now I'm calling it music business. Here we go, music directing. But something that I want to go back around to is you as a pianist and a musician, because you are an incredible pianist. And something we always talk about in the group that I try to really make clear to anyone who is going down this path is the importance of styles and being very specific with style. And I think the time I really understood that was we were in auditions together, and an actor wanted to play a song that he didn't have in his book. And you said, oh, it's a song I know. It was, I think, an Airbnb song. And you sat down and played just like a full rhythm section. You sounded so full and incredible. And I was like, it was amazing. And I was like, well, Brian, you're so lucky you can play like that. I come from classical. And you said, well, I come from classical too. And I was like, damn it, damn it. So how, for all of us classical musicians, but also can you talk about when you got to understand the importance of styles and how you learned it to do it so incredibly well?
Well, listen, growing up, I took classical piano lessons because that's the only kind of lessons you could take when you're in upstate New York in like, the 80s and 90s. I don't think you could take like a rock piano class, although I did take jazz piano lessons at one point. But, I just played like Billy Joel songs and Beatles songs and, songs that were on the radio. It's like what I wanted to do was play pop songs. And I did study classical and I did practice, and I did ultimately go to school twice for classical piano. I did an undergrad and I did a master's. But I always played in bands, and I always wanted to play what was on the radio. And so I think I learned just by doing, and in a lot of ways with music, and especially with pop music, that is the best way to do it, right? If you want to learn how to play an R&B song, well, start to learn how to play some R&B songs on the piano. I mean, you won't just get it through osmosis. You can't just like listen to a bunch of Stevie Wonder and sit down and play Stevie Wonder. You have to actually learn the notes, and you have to figure out like what your fingers are going to do. The style of it will come from understanding what the music sounds like and how it's made, and when it was recorded and how it was recorded. Those are all things that you can learn as you go. But I think pianists forget, because we're so used to being given sheet music, that you can go learn a song by anybody. You can learn a commercial or a ringtone. You just have to sit down and use your ears. And a lot of it you can buy sheet music for as well. I mean, music publishing is like still going strong, and you can go on Music Notes or Sheet Music Plus or whatever website, and that's not an ad, by the way. And buy the song and learn it. And it might not sound right of what's there, or maybe it does. But I think that's, I certainly learned about style just because I played so many different kinds of music, and that I knew, okay, well, I can't play Billy Joel the way that I would play Stevie Wonder. I mean, yes, maybe there is in that Venn diagram some like crossover, but they're two different styles of music, right? And so, listen, you got to listen to music. I think that's what it comes down to, is listening to the style that you're trying to recreate. Musical theater tends to be a mishmash in a lot of ways, and I think that musical theater has gotten a lot better over the years of not being so mishmashy and being a little bit more direct and clear in its approach to style. So on one hand, listening to cast albums is not going to teach you necessarily about pop music style. So you have to kind of go to the source and go to those artists and really listen to what they do.
We have a question here from someone whose name I cannot see. It shows up at Facebook user, so I am sorry. But here's the question. This person wants to know what your approach is when working on a new show. Do you think it's better to orchestrate as each song is written, or wait until there's a sketch of a full show before beginning that process? Just thinking about a show finding its own sound.
Yeah, so I definitely do a little bit of cart before the horse thinking when I'm starting to work on a new show, only because I like to have some sense of parameters in my brain of what it is at the end, right? And so, if I get asked to work on a show and I'm arranging and orchestrating it, for example, let's just say I'm doing both because it's easier for the purposes of this answer. I'm thinking, okay, well, this show is aimed for an off-Broadway run at a small theater, right? And so, and not necessarily Broadway. They really just want to do this in a small thing. And so I have to kind of understand I shouldn't be thinking about what 15 instruments are going to sound like, because just the logistics of, theater size and economics, that's not going to happen. If it is, for example, a Broadway show, thinking, okay, well, this is a show that it looks like there's, 28 to 40 people in the cast, for example, and it's a thing that takes place, it's going to be big sets, so we're probably going to go to a big theater. And so I can start to think, okay, 10 to 20, or 15 to 20. And, I try to like hone that down a little bit, just to at least have an idea of what I'm working with and what I might end up doing ultimately. In terms of actually writing and orchestrating, I tend to orchestrate as I arrange, because they're so intertwined in my brain, and they are different, and I can talk about the differences, but I do try to think of the whole thing at the same time. And so I definitely, though, I will start with the arrangement. I will definitely start there. And even if I know what the guitar will do, or if I know what the drum part will do, you do need to produce, readable sheet music for yourself to remember what it is you want to do, and for the singers to be able to read. And so no matter what, that has to sort of be your first step, even if you know what down the line it'll be. That said, a lot of the time, if I am arranging and orchestrating a show, I may do a full-on demo in Logic of all the instruments, of everything, and send that to the writer, or send that to the director or producer, or whoever whoever I'm collaborating with. Because again, back to something I said earlier, not everybody can hear in their brain what a song is going to sound like, with all the instruments. And so if I already know what it is, rather than try to explain that verbally, if I have the time and I can spend the time in Logic and put together a really clear, like, here is what I'm thinking, that saves me a lot of explaining, and it saves them a lot of mental work. Mm-hmm. In the like modern version of all of this, I'm also thinking of drum loops and, synth stuff and programming. And, for example, on A Heart of Rock and Roll, I did like really full Logic demos of almost everything as I did it. And that turned into, oh, well, we can take this loop and put it in the SPD pad, and we can take this keyboard sound that I did, and I can send that to Randy Cohen, and he can put that in the so it also helps me ultimately achieve the sound that I want, because I can use pieces of the puzzle, that people have been listening to for months and months with the demos, and actually use that to be performed with.
I love it. And to finish this, we're going to end with another of my favorite stories with Brian. I think this entire interview was based on all my memories of why I love Brian.
I didn't expect this, so it's
this is actually a memory from probably my first month in New York City when I first moved here. And by the way, as an aside, I just want to say, because sometimes, like particularly lately, people have been coming to me and saying, that theater music director is such a great resource. And I always say to people, it is the resource I wish I had. That's why I built it. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because I want to give people what I wish I had, and like the knowledge, and like, I used to be like, how do I even get to talk to anyone on Broadway? And now people can watch interviews and take lessons and learn from you, things like that. That's why I love it. So I remember moving to New York City, not knowing a thing about a thing. And I had a friend who said, well, I know this guy. I think he's on Broadway. His name is Brian Usifer. Maybe send him an email. And so I sent you an email, and I don't remember if I asked for coffee or just to introduce myself. I don't recall, but I remember your answer because you said, and I still remember that day. So you're like, would you want to sit in the pit at Book of Mormon tomorrow? And I was like, what? Me in a Broadway pit tomorrow? Yes. And like, that was like winning the lottery. That meant so much. See, I'm still emotional talking about it because that's the kind of impact we have on other people, because that world is still so magical. And like that, and the next day, sure enough, you were conducting Book of Mormon, and I sat in with Matt Doubler. It was probably my first time meeting him, and it was his second time playing the show. He was like, I'm sorry. So he apologized to me in advance. He was like, I'm sorry in advance. And I was like, sorry for what? You're on Broadway.
Yeah.
And so thank you again for that time, because that was incredible. And that was so generous of you. You didn't know me, and you just went out of your way and did that for a stranger. And I am here to tell you thank you again for that.
No, of course. And, I think that we all have to support each other, and we have to be there for each other. And I think that having a community like you've put together here is so incredible, because, 10 years before that story, when I was trying to sort of get into theater, there wasn't Facebook, and there wasn't, it was a lot harder to get access to people. And I struggled. I had a really hard time getting anybody to sort of give me the time of day. And that is what it is. And I've decided that I will be available to people, and that I will communicate with them. And I think that, knowing that I can't offer opportunities to everybody, and that's not really what it's about, that it is more about support and connection and answering questions. And, I'm always happy to answer an email when somebody, reaches out and says, hey, I just wanted to know like this, that, or the other thing. It might take me a minute, but I always get back to people. And I do think that allowing people to sit in pits, although I know not everybody shares this opinion, but it does make us all stronger, right? It makes us all more aware of how it really works and what's really going on. And it, especially when you're trying to break in and understand what the world is and how we do what we do, I think that really getting to see it is the best way to do that, because then you at least understand like, oh, this is what I'm going for. This is, because it's not only, these are the skills that I need, and this is what it looks like, and this is what people do. It's just understanding like, okay, now I know that I can focus on this. I know that like, this is the skill I have to work on, or actually I have that skill and I feel really confident that I can say, I can do that. I know how to do that. So I'm certainly glad that I answered the email, and it's been so great knowing you and working with you. And I hope there's many, many more years of that.
Ooh, from your mouth to God's ears. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for being amazing. Thank you for everything you do for the community and in musical theater. And I can't wait to see you at all the next shows that you're going to be up to. And thank you for taking the time to speaking to all of us. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in live. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.